Mayor, I wanted to ask initially about your announcement in your speech that starting immediately air quality being a decision. Can you elaborate on what you're planning to do as far as having air quality be a factor in every decision the city makes?
There almost isn't a single action or decision within any division or department we make that doesn't in some way connect to emissions, whether it's how people can commute to work as the 3,000 employees living here or that work here, or whether they can telecommute on certain times, the kind of investments we make into the systems we have here, businesses that we support, the buildings that are coming up that we issue loans to. There are air quality impacts to every one of these decisions. So I'll be issuing a letter today now to the departments and divisions directing them to build this in and come up with suggestions within the next 30 days to be submitted to the City Council and myself of ways their departments and divisions can reduce emissions.
What would you like to see, or what do you envision that ultimately being? Are we talking like buildings that start to get built in the city have to be greener buildings, or is it no idling in all city vehicles?
There are, yes, and more. There are so many ways we can improve. One of those that I've talked about as a RDA board member for about a year and a half is that the environmental qualifications that we issue loan discounts on for certain building projects around the city should be more strict when it comes to the environmental standards. So that's something that I will be submitting to the RDA board for consideration to tighten those standards. There's a lot of room to gain there. Net zero buildings are a thing of the future and something that Salt Lake City should be building toward in every building we invest in.
Erin, how are those impacts currently being thought through in the city, or are they for most projects? Is it just sustainability?
Can you excuse me just a moment? Where did you come from, my love?
Linda is.
Where who? Linda?
Yeah.
So she might be down in the council office. Who'd you come here with? Okay, Grandma. Grandma's let everything happen. Ask again, Taylor?
So you say you're going to make this be considered in all city decisions. Is air quality being considered in any city decisions right now, or what's kind of the current status that you're hoping to change?
I am aware that in the last budget cycle, Mayor Biskupski asked departments and divisions to evaluate where they could create emission savings, carbon reductions, and that some of those were worked into some of the budget proposal, and then what ultimately the council approved. That was a one-time effort, and I intend to infiltrate this into every decision-making process that all of the departments and divisions do going forward.
Your administration is starting with, dare I say, a little bit more turbulence than past ones, with protests that have been happening about the homeless problem. There are people that are saying that, yes, the homeless people are being turned away. That's the information they say that they're getting. The police say, no, there are actually beds, and we're trying to help people get to them. So how do you foresee maybe resolving this particular issue, where people are literally protesting against the city and the police?
Yeah, I think ultimately we all want the same solution, which is that no one is turned away from shelter when they seek shelter, particularly during these winter months. And we do need some immediate solutions to the transparency of bed availability. I think that a technological advancement, whether it's a website or an app, some way that the service providers throughout the system can update regularly what that bed availability is so that we are all seeing the same numbers at the same time. That's something that I'll begin the conversation with today. And I've tried to put some momentum there. But ultimately, we really need overflow emergency shelter opportunities, because I don't doubt that in the next 2 months, as blizzards come through, temperatures become low, and the weather conditions are very poor, that we will be short on beds in the homeless resource centers, and people would be turned away. I don't believe that sitting up in a chair sleeping at the Wiegand Center is the best and a humane option that we're offering. We need to actually provide opportunities for people to lay down and sleep. So this is not a Salt Lake City issue for us to take on alone. That's where we have the state, county partners, nonprofits, and really a lot of philanthropy help in figuring out what do we do next. I don't believe there's a shortage of resources. It's really figuring out what steps do we need to take to get there.
More broadly, can you speak a little bit about your vision for 4 years from now? What does Salt Lake City look like? You touched on it during your speech, but maybe kind of the short version of some of the things that you'd like to see 4 years from now, the city be different.
So at a general level, and I can give you specifics as we go in, the people and communities will be more integrated into Salt Lake City's business. That will look like Salt Lake City going out into communities to have conversations, not just open houses that we host here. It will also look like recruitment and work with communities to bring them in as employees, bring more people to the table. As Councilmember Valdemoros eloquently said, we need to make the table longer. Salt Lake City is a diverse community. Salt Lake City Corporation is not as diverse as the people that it serves. Secondly, bringing environmental resilience and really a carbon reduction and carbon sequestration effort to the actions of the city and investments of the city. One of those specifics I can give you, Salt Lake City owns a lot of parcels of land, hundreds if not 1,000 pieces of land. Some of them are strange shapes, some of them have never been built upon. We can look at the type of landscaping that actually sequesters carbon and make those properties intentional components of a carbon reduction strategy for Salt Lake City. That's just one of the ideas that's come up in the transition work around the environment. The third thing would be harnessing the growth of Salt Lake City for the betterment of all of our residents. Growth is happening here. Now, how long it continues for, we don't know. But while it's happening, while investment is happening and our population continues to grow, Salt Lake City needs to become more integrated in the work that's happening there so that we actually get more of what we need out of the growth. There's a lot of ground to gain whether you talk to someone who's trying to get a permit and it's taking too long, or a business opportunity that hasn't had the mayor come to the conversation yet. There's a lot of ground for us to gain in injecting the city and our needs into the growth that's happening here.
Back on the homeless protest issue over the weekend, are their concerns justified in your mind? I know that you, on the campaign, raised concerns about the idea of closing the road home a little too early.
I have been raising concerns about the road home closing for over a year and a half. Since the conversation started as a city council person, even as the chair of the council, I raised that concern. I wish that the state would have opted to keep that as an overflow as a shelter option through this winter while our HRCs come online. Clearly there's a need, and those are keys that the state holds, not the city. But I share in the feeling and the clear need for shelter options for people. Now, I've gone out at times with the police and spoken with people who are camping on our streets, asked about whether or not they've even tried to access the shelters, and I get mixed responses. The majority of people that I've just talked to, not a scientific study, haven't tried to approach or enter our homeless resource centers and are choosing to camp there. That says to me, and from listening to them talk about the need for community and wanting to be around their friends and their family that they've built, really, we need to look at how do we build housing opportunities that are community-centered. And other cities around the country are doing this. There's one in Austin in particular that I'm interested in. Sometimes those are tiny home conglomerations that offer cooking together, shared dining, jobs and skill building opportunities, shared spaces. So clearly there's a gap. I think there's a gap in the shelter options, but there's really a gap in housing options that are attractive to people who are the most shelter resistant. Okay, let's go have cold cuts.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you.